So it's just going to be we've budgeted an hour.
Okay.
Why is that? The computers.
Maybe I think it's just
Okay.
probably the
projector.
The projector
Okay.
switched off.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's just going to be we're chatting about your experience as an international student here at HKU. We are very interested in the barriers or obstacles you faced, or how your experience has differed, has met or not met your expectations. Mm-hmm. As I said earlier, I'm just a part-time research assistant. I don't have any affiliation with the university or any faculty, so I hope you feel like this is a safe space where you can say whatever you want to say. Anything that you say can be amended at a later time if you wish. You just let us know. Also, at any point in this discussion, if you want to stand up and leave, you can. You don't have to explain why. You can also refuse to answer any of my questions. I'll also be taking notes. Feel free to have a look or ask me what I'm writing. And then, of course, we're recording your audio, but then when your voice, no one else will hear your voice apart from the transcribers, and you'll have no identifiable information. So, do you have any questions before we get started? No? Okay. Well, why don't we start? Why don't you tell me why you decided to come to the interview today?
So I've been a student here for probably like 1 year and 1 month. Mm-hmm. And when I first started, I had a lot of issues with the university. And probably like my expectations would have been, I kind of assumed it would have been a smoother process than it was starting here. And I've kind of acted as a role of student representative for my department in quite a few cases now. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, that's a perfect opportunity. Because a lot of the issues that were raised, I'm kind of passing now, like stuff to do with courses that we have to do, and that kind of thing. For me, I'm kind of I'm ticking all of the boxes now, so I'm not directly exposed to those issues anymore. But I thought, it's a great opportunity to kind of say, okay, this does happen, and I think many students have raised the same issues over and over again, but there seems to be no progress. So.
Right. What are some of the issues?
Related to our department, and I think international, like PhD students here, it's not necessarily the departmental courses we have to do, but the graduate school courses that we have to do are, I think, frustrating for a lot of people here. And I've just seen that they've actually amended this. They're introducing like a new thesis writing module specifically for science, and then specifically for geography related students, and also offering a course for students that English is their first language. Because I think this was a real issue, that people were going to these classes, but we weren't really benefiting from any of the graduate school classes here. Mm-hmm. And even though so when I've done reports for my department before, the departmental chairperson has to say, and he saw it and he contacted me and was like, okay, come and talk to me about it. But as far as it goes for the department to influence the graduate school, they have really no say. So yeah, I think there's a lot of frustration within the school that people are here obviously because they like to learn, but then we feel like we're just having to do these courses to tick boxes, and we could be using our time more wisely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something we've heard from a few participants now, that the grad school courses aren't really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay.
And I think tying into that, just like with my expectations of coming here, I had no idea that I'd have to do courses, and maybe that's a bit of ignorance on my part, because my application process and it was very quick. I saw an email from my supervisor, like my current supervisor. I didn't know him at the time. I emailed like, yes, I'm interested in my particular case, like crabs and mangroves, and within 3 days he was like, okay, come. So it was a very quick. I applied, I got everything done that I had to do in order to get on the kind of the funding proposal that he had. But I had no idea that we had to do courses. I had no idea that it was a 4-year program. I had not really a clue about any of it, really. Because from my experience, having compulsory courses to do is quite bizarre for a PhD.
What other issues have you voiced on other people's behalf? Or
so probably like transparency and just the bureaucracy of the university. It's quite frustrating. There seems to be so many departments involved in so many different areas, and there's clear like miscommunication between all of them. I think that was an expectation. Oh wow, I'm going to the University of Hong Kong. They'll be able to do this stuff, but actually no. It's like frustrating every step of the way. Whether it's using the website, the interface is terrible, or trying to find out some information for a course, or actually having to apply and enroll for courses. And it's just so this semester I was unable to. Well, I mean, initially I started in October my PhD. And I wasn't told at any point that, that might be an issue because we have an 18-month probation period, and if you come in October, you won't be able to you won't be able to enroll for any of the classes. And then when I got here, I obviously had 4 months where I couldn't really do anything. And then this semester, I failed to enroll on any of the courses because they were full. And then I went through the manual system of handing the form in, and the day after I handed the form in, I received an email saying, "Are you aware that you have not completed these courses?" And I was like, "Yes, I am aware. I personally gave you the letter like yesterday." It just seems it could be a lot simpler, and they make it harder for themselves than it needs to be. Or that for a University of Hong Kong, they should be able to organise lessons that, are appropriate and that people can actually attend. And then more of the transparency, I think. Regarding like initially coming here, as no one that I know of in my department knew that there would be composition fees for the year, and that's been quite a shock for everyone I know. Kind of a month before you've probably got your tickets already, you're closing down your life where you live and preparing to move, and then you have an email saying, "Oh, by the way, we need over 20,000 Hong Kong dollars from you within the next month, otherwise you can't start." I had no idea about that. So it just feels like there are a lot of issues. I just feel like they could have been a lot more transparent than they were.
That sounds really frustrating. So with the finances, have you had any issues with that?
Not particularly, as in it being able to pay, or it is. I was helping a friend out surveying 2 nights ago, and like he's been here for over a year and he can't go home because he's like, I have to save for the composition fee. And it's a stressful situation because a lot of us, like, we're adults in this situation and we have other things to pay, and I have a career development loan back in the UK that I have to pay every month, and I'm in a position where I'm living at Swim, so I get kind of subsidised rent. It's only 2,000 Hong Kong dollars around a month, but if I was in a situation where I had to live in the city, I don't know how I'd cope, because on top of that it's about 2,500 Hong Kong a month that I have to pay for that career development loan, and then there are other obviously expenses that you add and add and add. So for a lot of people it is frustrating and it's difficult, and I suppose it's a good experience having to save, but at this point in our lives, and especially living in one of the most expensive cities in the world, it is a real issue.
Right. Yeah. What about, do you have any experience with applying for funding for your from your department or anything like that for your studies?
No. I think at one point I was told when I had the meeting with the departmental chairperson, they mentioned that for American students there was some kind of personal funding available based on the fact that their particular loan system in the US related to like student loans, because they have to pay a certain amount, or they're taxed. There's something like you could kind of state that to the University of Hong Kong, and therefore have that considered within your pay or within the tuition that you're expected to pay. But there's a friend of mine here that was trying to do that, and I was talking to him at the time, and him and his supervisor were just going around in circles. It seemed that this was I forget like the actual details of it, but I knew there was some funding available in this situation, because he basically said to me that for my case, because I have got a career development loan, he didn't see how it would be different. He was like, that should be something that you should be able to apply for. But even in this case, where two individuals, they were trying to do it for like half a year, and it's available, but they would just go round and round in circles. So, but I'm not aware of any other funding or looked into it.
Yeah.
It's just something I think we all put up with.
Yeah. Have you personally, what have your interactions been with the admin?
Yeah, generally positive. Like frustrating. Like before I came here, I did send an email like, look, I hope you don't find this like, I'm not criticising you, it's more just like constructive feedback, because I'm a new student here, and I've at this point, it's all just, I feel like it could have been a lot smoother. But when you actually get here, especially like the faculty, like the biological sciences, the admin there are really friendly. They can't really do more to help you. When you're corresponding them via email, it can be quite frustrating, and sometimes it may feel like you're just like, oh, talk to this person, talk to that person, but actually when you're there, they're really friendly. And I've had a few so with like more general, the university things like the finance department, I've had a few cases where I haven't received my pay, or I've had to go through the grace period before paying my composition fees, but they're always timely, they're always really understanding, and everything seems to be figured out pretty quickly.
So would you say that the admin is, like if you go in person, it's fine, but then over email there might be time lag and
yeah,
like.
And I think it's easier if you have a specific problem that faculty can deal with, but some of the issues, I think people don't understand if it falls within them, and you kind of, if there's an issue which requires like cross-departmental like communication, it's a nightmare in my experience.
Yeah. So if you didn't really know who to ask, then it's generally an inefficient process. Okay. This is what we've been hearing a lot from participants, that there's sort of like inefficiency generally with the admin.
I think that in my case that extends out in all areas in Hong Kong. So I just like, because it's so bureaucratic here. Like for me, a simple process is, I'm like, why? Or you might want to change something, and in some ways it might be, someone's initiative, but because it is the way here and there are steps and you must follow every single step and do it, it is inefficient. And just because that's the way it's been done for years doesn't mean it's the best way to do it.
What about interactions with what about your supervisor?
Mm-hmm. I get along very well with my supervisor. I'm in a situation where I have like two fellow lab mates, and they both had quite bad problems with this particular individual, which kind of makes it a bit awkward for me, because I feel like either I'm waiting for it to happen, or it's just awkward anyway, right? Because they're your friends,
right? And
they're like, well, why isn't? And they say that they're happy that I haven't experienced this, but obviously, I think if I was in their situation, I'd feel a bit put out and like, what am I doing? And it's been very personal, and it hasn't been professional, and I felt in an awkward position then, because at times like I haven't wanted to work under someone that can act like that, and it's a real issue knowing that if you don't know what to do, right? Because it's like, well, this isn't acceptable, but it's on that lab mate's kind of, you don't want to put them in it by going over them and talking to someone if they don't want the issues to be raised, and it's knowing who to talk to and that, because I think the issues have been solved, but it was solved within the department, and it's very, in my experience especially, they're kind of all friends, so they'll do it in a professional manner, but I still think some issues should have been raised, and it's more like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. So I'm thinking about a past case now with the supervisor that doesn't work here anymore. But there's no black mark against his name, and he should have definitely had it in the academic world. Like, he was incredibly inappropriate, pretty much constantly. And socially, he's known by people that know him. They know that, but he was bullying and abusing his students, like, mentally. And he's just got a new job and gone away.
Right.
And I feel like that's an easy way out, right? And I kind of feel like it's the same with what's happened with my supervisor and my fellow students. They sit down, they have a conversation, and it's all like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, well, no, I think you should have had an apology, really. I think that's inappropriate, and just because they're in this position doesn't mean that they should, you know. But things seem to be okay at the moment.
So was that issue ever addressed in HKU? You don't have to go into details.
Between the director, yeah. And they've put plans in place going forward, and I think it's a lot more open and transparent now, and we're all making more of an effort to kind of communicate more.
Yeah. That's something that we're really interested in, is the dynamics between individuals and supervisors, and how what different factors feed into that interaction, that relationship. And we've had some people mention, like, mentally abusive supervisors, and that's really severe, and that's something that needs to change. And so I'm happy to hear that you have sounds like a good relationship with your supervisor, but I think what we're finding is that's kind of the luck of the draw kind of relationship, where your style matches your supervisor's style, but we are finding that that's not really the case for a lot of people.
Yeah. I do definitely feel as well, like, so a lot of the issues I've mentioned, just the way I came into this university, and kind of, I hope that I've always been polite in this, but just because it was such a shock to me, and I was like, oh, hey, I'm not, like, this is the case, and the conversations that I had with my supervisor before I came out, I was like, this is wrong again, and I was in the UK, they were here, so they were kind of able to act on my behalf, and they're like, oh, you know, joking about how bureaucratic it is, and I was like, but no, this isn't fair, like, I didn't know about this, and this is stressful, and I feel like because I've flagged so many issues at so many points, they may be kind of scared that I kind of wasn't happy anyway, and I was basically waiting. If this individual had acted towards me in the same manner, I wouldn't be here, and I think they know that. So I think they go out of their way to kind of, maybe they're not scared, but I think they'd be scared of, like, losing me here, because it wouldn't look good, right?
Right.
And they know that I'm like, no, that's not good.
Yeah.
Whereas other people might not. So I don't think it's necessary. We do get on with our working relationship, but I don't think that's the only factor. I think, I'm quite vocal. So.
Yeah. And I don't think I think that you're in the minority in that sense. And for those who aren't as vocal and don't feel empowered or don't feel confident to be able to voice their concerns, this is a real issue.
Yeah, definitely.
I think maybe that's why you've become, like, the student rep.
I have done it previously, which I think is why I may have felt comfortable having those conversations. But like you say, it's not fair if, like, the majority of people are, you know. Oh, but then even when we are voicing these opinions, nothing's really being done. They listen, and it's like, well, like, I feel really sorry for the students that are coming to the end of their 4 years here now. Every year they have a new cohort, and they listen to the same complaints, and they're like, we've been saying for 4 years that this is crap, and this needs to be changed, and this could be so much better, and it's not. I think in our situation as well, so you've probably had students here that are from SWIMS as well, and this is Wyatt Institute of Marine Science, so we live way out, like below Sheko. We live at the research station there, so that was another. I didn't realise how the transport situation, and that's a real point of stress for people living there as well. It's really isolated. I had no idea that the refurbishment was going to happen within the time that I was living there, which is now an issue as well. And you know, when when that marine station was up and running, people that came in from Hong Kong University or around Hong Kong Island would have a bus, like a staff van, that would get them in for 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and that would leave at 5 p.m, 5:30 p.m. But in our case, if we're living there and we have to get to campus to do these courses, sometimes starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, there's no way, like, there is no transport available to us unless, like, they put on staff vans at certain points in the day, but there's a local shuttle service from the PCCW company, but it's not structured as in a time that we could have, like, a full day of work. Like, we're really, yes, it's cheaper living there, and there's less people, and it's beautiful, but it's isolated, and we can't get out, and we can't get in, and, you know, a taxi ride from Shok Hai Wan is at least, like, 100 Hong Kong dollars now in about half an hour, so I know people commute a lot in Hong Kong, but there were all these issues that I didn't know before I came here, and that it just adds another layer of complexity and stress and frustration with the students in our department that live there.
Do you think that you mentioned that you didn't know this before coming, and also that do you think that was, like, personally you just didn't really look into it, or was it more the university wasn't clear on what exactly was available and what would be offered?
I think, like, it's interesting because I feel like now it's been a good experience, because from now on I will definitely look into, and I'll know the right questions to ask, but I wouldn't say it's just me, because pretty much all of my friends went through the same experience, right? And I did have a point of contact, and that friend did mention to me, okay, you know, you should be aware that there will be tuition fees. But leading up to it, I received no information, and I thought, oh, I must be on, like, a different scholarship. I must have a different funding scheme. And then boom, 2 weeks before I moved, you know, can we have 20,000 Hong Kong?
Right.
But so now I think we're really going out actively to. By the time that you're introduced to a student here, you've kind of already said yes. And then even if this does filter out, like, oh, we live here and this is our commute, and you kind of feel like, oh, it's exciting, and then you get here and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Would you say that what if you had looked for information, do you think that you'd be able to find it?
No. Yeah, no.
Okay, so that's also something that we're finding is, like, maybe not I don't know if selective is the right word, but not the whole picture isn't really portrayed. Yeah. And also we're finding a little bit that the university has misleading marketing.
Definitely, on 100%.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience?
So yeah, I've mentioned a bit about my experience, but that was definitely one of the factors. I said when in that email that I sent, I was like, you know, it just felt like there would be one email here saying, can I have this? One email here saying, can we have this? We need this by this date, and they were different departments. And I was like, why? There could have been a starter pack that literally said, by this date, we will need you to send this. We will need you to send that. We will need this. Blah, blah, blah. Like A, B, C, D, continued. When it wasn't like that. And from the get-go, I think they should have been transparent in the fact that we were expected to pay composition fees. Like, you know, the breakdown of our tuition and the breakdown of our scholarship and what our scholarship meant. Because in our scholarship, it's like, okay, within 18 months, you're expected to do these courses, plus plus pay this amount every 6 months. I don't know. I don't see why that isn't done, and especially with the supervisors. In my case, I said, look, wow, I was not expecting this. Oh yeah, sorry. Like we thought that they'd tell you. They say that over and over and over again. Once they've got you hooked, right? And then it's like, oh yeah, well it's kind of up to the finance department or whoever's dealing with the admin in the department to do it. And it extends over to postdocs now, because there is a a postdoc in our department who was told that they would be receiving more money than they received, who was told that they wouldn't have to pay tax on the money that they received, who was told that they would be in a secure place, like a secure job position for 2 years, and now it turns out they're coming up to their 1 year, that they'll have to produce a report and go through kind of like a checking period to receive the next payment. Now that's a postdoc, that's someone like 10, 15 years my senior that kind of has, like, in my opinion, more risk for their life, right? Like, they're moving so many thousands of miles, they've been told all of this information, they've made like a huge life commitment and change based on false information. And when you do try and flag it up, there's nothing you can do about it. And I think that's even written into a lot of the contracts here. I know a lot of the postdocs here, with supervisors that are more savvy, they will go through and like adapt the contract and make Hong Kong U change it before they sign up, because I think there are clauses like, oh, you won't be able to get a pay rise or silly, like the university definitely goes out of their way to hide things like that. And I don't know whether it's falsification of information vocally, but I'm pretty sure the tracks are covered on paper.
Right.
But by that point, there's a sense of trust, right? And you're like, oh, well, this is the case, and I think that's kind of, yeah, abused, really.
Can you talk a little bit more about the trust? What does that make you feel, and how does that affect your satisfaction at HKU?
It was just really frustrating. Like, for a long time, I was, like, 6 months in, I was really upset. And one thing I will say, like, CEDARS, the health service here, the COPE, is amazing, because I've used them quite frequently. Because I was at a point where I was here and I felt like I made so many... It's weird, because I felt really grateful for the opportunity and that I couldn't miss it, because I've always wanted to do a PhD, and in the UK it's incredibly competitive, and I was in a situation where in a matter of a week someone I didn't know was like, yeah, come out, there's money, do it. And I was like, wow, I can't say no, because 2 years down the line, if I'm still applying in the UK and I can't get one, then I'll really regret it. But then you're here and you're personally like 6,000 miles away from home and living in quite an isolated area, and I've always grown up in the countryside, so Hong Kong was quite a stark difference, and financial security issues as well. It all felt like I made so many personal sacrifices, and I felt really frustrated and really upset. And for a long time, like, I was talking with family and friends, like, okay, I'll give it till Christmas, we'll see how it goes. But I've been lucky at the point where, like I've said, I feel like I know my mental boundaries, and if I got to a point where I experienced what my fellow lab mates did, I feel like that would have definitely been like too much, and it wouldn't have been worth it for me. So far everything's been manageable, but it has been a real point of like frustration, and it has influenced my mental health. So
yeah, that's really worrying that we're finding. Thank you for sharing, by the way.
Okay.
That we're finding things can be so bad that they are affecting people's mental health, and they're affecting people's sense of well-being and like desirability, like their desire to stay here. And I've spoken to a few participants who said some of their friends have dropped out, and they just, like, supervisor relationship was so bad they don't want to continue. And these are the things that we're really looking for, and the point of our research is we're hoping that interviews like this and can inform policy change and best practice in the future. But I'm happy to hear that the CEDARS service has worked for you. But we're also recognizing that some students might not feel like they can't make that, they're unable to make that first step, and that's so crucial. And it's even frustrating as I'm just the qualitative interviewer. That's literally the only connection I have to this project. I don't go to HKU. I've never been to HKU. Yeah. And it's frustrating for me to hear the same thing over and over again. And it's just like the participants are saying the same thing in different ways with different degrees of frustration. But at the end of the day, there are these trends that we're seeing popping up in every single interview. What about socially, how has that been for you in HKU?
Good now, I'd say. So I think that's, so me reaching out to Cedars, okay, not everyone's going to do that, but also I got to a point where I was so upset. I was like, right, well, I'm going to have to start doing stuff. So, like, I've gone out of my way to do activities that fulfill me and stuff like that. And so socially, it's a lot better now. Like, I'm in a position where I'm enjoying Hong Kong, and coming to this interview today, I was like, oh, I kind of, I don't like to be negative, and I was like, oh, not that I've put it all behind me, and I was like grateful that actually it's hopefully going to help and push it somewhere. But it's so frustrating, and it's hard. Like, new students come in and you're like, okay, yeah, I've been there, it is horrible. And but socially, our department feels really nice, and everyone's really friendly, and people will go out of their way to help you. When I first arrived, the first thing I noticed was just how different cultures and different nationalities interact. And I felt like, coming from the UK, everyone was like really abrupt. Like, I'd end up in situations where I'd say yes to going somewhere when I really wanted to go home, and I just learned that, okay, no, they're not being rude, it's just the way that they are. So I think I am a bit more abrupt now. Like, a year on, I found that was a really interesting insight. Not all cultures interact the same, and British people are like really polite and socially awkward in a lot of situations, and that was kind of enlightening. But now there is a good, our department it's quite social and nice, and there seems to be kind of like a family kind of feel to it at times, and people do go out of their way to spend time with each other.
That's really nice to hear you say family feel. I think that's really important for someone who has come from so far, and you mentioned like sometimes you miss home. But do you think that the family feel comes from, is because of the personalities in the group, and that's why it works, or what do you think contributes to that?
It's funny, like, I think our shared frustration is probably something that does unite us. Everyone goes through the same stuff all the time, and we all understand it, and then at the same point we're all biologists, and everyone's fields are quite interesting, and there are a lot of different personalities there. So obviously some people, there are a few people here that I am so lucky to have met, and they're really kind of like my people, and I know I'm going to know them for the rest of my life. But there are other people that are just kind of, they're nice, and everyone gets on, and they're civil and funny. So there's no one that's really horrible. But yeah, I think it's probably, because we're all doing PhDs, right? And we've all going through the same steps in life, and
it's like the shared experience that brings you all together. Earlier you mentioned culture. Can you speak a little bit about what that means?
Personally, I find it non-existent in Hong Kong, but just kind of more, I don't know if culture is the right word for it, but just the way people interact with each other, or people's expectations of people, or I learned very quickly not to take quite some stuff like personally here, or if someone was abrupt with me, then okay, that's just their way of doing things, and actually it's a lot more efficient than being like, oh, I'm not sure, and I'll tell you later, and maybe.
When you mean they, are you referring to a certain group?
So like the cohort that I was just mentioning, like the people.
Are they, and what's the demographics of that cohort?
Age-wise, or just like, so they're
whatever
all, like,
feeds into culture.
The PhD students, they're all international.
Do you have many interactions with local students?
I do, and that's really lovely. I think I know people that don't, but I kind of feel like I go out of my way to kind of interact and mix and mingle, and I've had a lot of help from a couple of local students here in particular, but even they have told me anecdotes that may prevent local students mixing. Like, I have one friend with international students, one friend that's been basically bullied, and it's been commented to her, why do you hang around with international students? They're only here for a few years, then they'll leave. Like, they won't offer you any benefit to your PhD. Like, they've actually been aggressive, been hostile towards her for having international friends. And a lot of the time, you know, it's more like being international. I don't speak Cantonese, and you know, I'm just in my own world, like, oh yeah, everyone, happy families. But when it comes to local students, and I think mainland students, there are a lot of issues. And it's like, well, it's clear that because we don't speak the lingo, that there comments are made, and there is, you know, I think there has been a history of bullying in that kind of sense, which is really sad.
Yeah.
And then when I hear about it, I'm like, what?
Do you mean bullying between mainland students and local students, or local students and anyone?
So the stories that I've heard have been like between local students, maybe mainland students, or I haven't experienced issues between local students and international students, but that's the thing. Like, I know in particular cases people that will comment about stuff, but obviously I'm just there, smile and wave, like I don't know what's going on, but they could easily be saying, you know, that, yeah. But in the cases it's, you know, in like lab situations, people using the same equipment, people being really hostile. One girl before I moved out here quit because of bullying from like a lab mate. So,
jeez. But
this is another thing, right? So in that particular story, I'll probably take my name off this now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was a story. So there was a girl, and she needed some equipment, and there's a particular girl we work with that can be quite awkward, and this one girl was really just mean and horrible to the other. And she was annoyed that she was using her equipment, but it was more like, I think it was like some mesh. It was something really, really trivial. But actually, this girl and our technician set up cameras in the laboratory, like secret cameras, to watch this girl. That technician's still working here. Like, this is the thing. I'm like, what? This mentally, like, no, no, out. That's unacceptable. Like, yeah, it's balmy when you hear some of these stories, and you're like, how is this acceptable? Like, crazy.
Yeah. That's shocking.
Yeah, it's bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so this pair, so this one student and this technician, personally, I've never really had any problem with this technician, but even a few weeks ago, my supervisor came up to me like, oh, I've heard from this technician there have been issues, and that she feels like our department, our particular lab group is dirty, and you know, even my supervisor is like, oh, she doesn't know what she's on about, and don't worry, like, don't take anything from her. If she emails you anything inappropriate, send it to me directly. We're really frustrated with her attitude, blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, well, on the front of it, I have no issues from her, but then you just... We've recently moved out of swims, and we had to move all of the lab equipment, and there was an email that this particular technician sent round that was basically like, I'm so annoyed that nobody helped me, only this individual and this individual helped me. And we were kind of like, well, if we'd have known that you needed that help, then that's something we'd have definitely done. And she can be really abrupt with students, and obviously these frustrations are something that brings us together, because we have a WhatsApp group, and I remember a friend messaging, I've just asked the technician for this, and they just shot me down completely and were really rude to me. And at the same time, this other girl is basically, she's on this group, and she's talking to the technician, telling her everything in Cantonese. Like, you know, it's just this big spin, and it's not good. And things seem to have moved on from that, but there is a sense, like, some technicians I feel can be quite abrupt. And I've had friends that are in like the earth sciences department when they've been training on equipment in the biological sciences, that they had a problem with one technician calling them a stupid girl and like really making them feel like belittling them and stuff, and it's just not.
Wow.
And it's a shame because the excuses I hear, or not excuses, but from my local friends, they're like, oh, that's just the local way, or that's the mainland way. Like, they're the boss, and you were the stupid student, and you were the kind of, you know, work to the ground, and that is the dynamic. And even I've had intern students helping me, and they will call me boss, and I'm like, I'm not your boss. I'm not your boss. And they're like, okay, boss. I'm like, no, it's like so ingrained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that the actually, never mind. Okay. Well, that doesn't sound very pleasant at all. That's not new. And don't worry, this is completely anonymous. I don't want you to worry about any of this coming out. Sounds like it sounds like this can like these sort of like, for example, the bullying in the lab perhaps isn't HKU specific. It could happen anywhere, but what is HKU specific is how they handle it after it's been brought up, right? And it doesn't sound like they've done much about it. That's the stuff that we're really interested in. Is there anything you want to share about... actually, can we talk a little bit about your interactions as the student rep? I'm assuming that you've spoken to people in admin or staff. How have those conversations been, and how have they handled your...
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's the same again, really. Like, there's a process available to you, but how efficient and how fruitious it is kind of null. Like, it's like, oh, okay, in this situation, this is the process you follow, but then nothing really occurs. So I'm not like... I say student rep as in the fact that when I did write my first biannual report, I mentioned quite a lot of this, and at that time I was really sad, and and I remember filling it in, and I was just like I wasn't in a good place, and I was like, this is everything, and I feel like students at SWIMS or in that department, like a lot of students have suffered with depression and stuff, and I'm like, this isn't cool, and I think that's why it was flagged up, and that's why the departmental chairperson was like, this is serious, I want to talk to you. But when we did talk about it, there's nothing really the school can do. I mean, it was good that system was in place, but when I had this opportunity to talk to him, I basically said to my cohort, like, I have this meeting, if you have anything you want me to raise, I will raise it. But most of the stuff that we need to raise, it's like they listen and then there's not much that can be done about it. So the graduate school courses, oh, well, that's the graduate house. We've been trying for years. There's nothing we can do. Related to departmental courses, there's one course that everyone suffers with, biostatistics. We're all international students who have done like first class honours in a science or then a master's after. And we're put into an undergraduate biostatistics class, which is 36 hours, 3 hours of a Monday. And this particular year, the teaching was awful, and we were just exposed to really, it's like we had to sit with the space between us, and like really just like, we're not, no. And I'm like, I struggle with authority at that level. I know, I'm like, okay, just shut up and sit down and do it. Like, do your time. But I was like, I'm so restricted. I think I went to like 1.5 of those classes because it just made me so stressed being there, and we didn't learn anything. But in that case, the school was like, okay, well, you can take a course instead of it. So I applied for applied quantitative methods instead, which is a bit more, it's like, okay, you've got a background in biostats, you want to learn a bit more. And they were like, yeah, okay, that should be fine. Then I came back denied. I couldn't swap over because the course was only 10 hours instead of 36 hours. And I was like, well, no other course is 36 hours, so therefore we have to do that, or it's just round and round frustrations. And then for the SWIM students, the people that are living out and Cape d'Aguilar, they've been trying to get transport for years. Not even transport. Some of them were like, okay, well, can the university buy like 5 bikes that we all share? And there are insurance issues, or when students have personally contacted the transport department there and they're like, it's too dangerous for a bus to come down. I'm like, if it's too dangerous for a bus to come down, it must be too dangerous for us to live there. Like, or there's, you know, we have to, those taxi journeys add up, and, you know, if anything, I feel like there should be like some financial compensation, or you know, the meeting I had, all of these issues came up, and a lot of people agree, oh yes, yeah, there should be transport, but then what can be done about it? It's just different students in different years saying the same stuff over and over, and people just nodding until it's
gone.
Yeah, until it's gone, and then the next person comes up. So, yeah, there are processes, but I feel like they're just like a facade.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. No, that's not new either. What about, just before we finish, as someone coming from the UK, how has your being here affected your sense of self? Has it?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, frequently, like every other week, I feel like, you know, yeah. I don't really know how to answer that question. It definitely has, but I feel like there's like personal stuff in there as well. Like, you know, now I'm starting to enjoy living in the city, and I'm like, well, I never thought I would be able to. Or, you know, I'm not sure that I do want to go into academia, but for me, you know, getting paid to learn every month, living in a different city, it was like, okay, that's a challenge, and that's something that I want to do. And realistically, if I was in the UK, I'd probably still be looking for a job related to biology or related to ecology. So, you know, in my situation, I kind of feel like I have 4 years of my life, or 3 years left, like, to play around with that. But like, even recently, I've made like some real intentions to myself, like, okay, I'm in Hong Kong, and one of the main reasons I couldn't turn it down was the opportunity to travel. There's a lot more of like personal overlaps in it. Like even though I've always been interested in PhD, I feel like I could be a lot more enthused and interested in it, and I feel like it would have been different if the department and the graduate house and the university was. I feel in a way like when I first arrived, I was embarrassed by the uni. I kind of still am. Like, if I have the university as I came from, I was thinking, God, if I imagine them coming, and they do, because I did my masters in the University of Exeter, and now the biology department has kind of like an affiliation with them, and they come over and do some of the field courses, and I am embarrassed. I'm like, these are my ex-supervisors and like friends now, and some of my old cohort, and to show, I know SWIMS has been refurbished now, but when I first arrived there, I was like, this is the University of Hong Kong, Swire Institute of Marine Science, like, world acclaimed. No way. It was embarrassing, and just the way, yeah, I'm embarrassed. As a world acclaimed university, I don't know how how they scored on that. From my experience, I'm like, no. Yeah.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah, that mustn't. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I feel like you opened up about a lot of sensitive and difficult information, and having to recall things that had happened that sound very negative and very unpleasant and very frustrating. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I think I've covered quite a lot. Yeah.
We didn't talk so much about like, for example.
Okay.
But it's okay. These are just guiding questions. But if you feel like you have anything else you'd like to share.
I mean, I think that one kind of ties in with, like you said, if is the information accessible? No, it isn't. Yeah. It really isn't. And even when I've been trying to like enroll on courses, you know, I realise I'm quite an impatient person, and one of my friends is like, oh, you just do this, and that. I'm like, but where does it tell you to do this, and that? And they're like, well, you just kind of play around and work it out. And I'm like, no, real lack of information. There's a real lack of resources, and I feel that should be available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if there's nothing you can think of right now that you want to share, we can wrap up here. But if you do have anything you'd like to add or change and about anything you've said, feel free to email us. Mm-hmm. Everything that you've said will be anonymized. So with that, I guess we can...
Thank you.